Imam al-Buhuti in the next section of this chapter of Zakat discusses Zakat al-Fitr, and he says it is obligatory upon every Muslim, be they from the countryside, al-Badiyah, or elsewhere. And it's also obligatory from the wealth of the orphan, based on the saying of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, which is found in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam obligated Zakat al-Fitr, 1 sa'a of dates or wheat for the bondservant and freeman, the male and female, and the young and old from the Muslim community, and he ordered them to give it before the people went out for prayer. 4, whoever possesses more than their own food, that of their family, their obligatory spending for themselves and those they take care of regarding housing, servants, transportation, work clothes, etc., of both the night and day of Eid, and what they distribute, meaning Zakat al-Fitr. So you're obliged to give Zakat al-Fitr if you are, as was just described, you have an excess amount of foodstuffs, or enough to buy foodstuffs, like money, beyond your obligatory spending, beyond your own food needs, the needs of your family, that which you have to pay for, like housing, etc., and what you need for the night and day of Eid, for clothes and food, etc. And then, of course, you have to account for what you actually have to give for Zakat al-Fitr. So that amount of food, you have to have an excess of that, of course. Your religious duties should not leave you in a bad situation. To fulfill your financial religious obligations, like paying zakat, zakat al-fitr, making hajj, etc., in order to fulfill those, they're not going to leave you in dire straits. And so there is a minimum level, if you will, that obligates and requires you to do that. So you have to meet that minimum level. Otherwise, you're not obliged. It says, which is in addition to what was previously mentioned, to pay their zakat and the zakat of others. This is considered because paying the zakat is more important and takes precedent over what was mentioned before, based on the Prophet saying, begin with yourself and then those you are responsible for. It's hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. Possession of the nisab is not considered for it to be an obligation. So the nisab of zakat, and the nisab of zakat, if you're talking about currency, we mentioned that it was 20 mithqals of gold and 100 dirhams of silver, and that's approximately 85 grams of gold and 30 some grams of silver. So we're not going to look at, do you possess the nisab or not? Is the nisab of currency, or we're not going to look for nisab at all. But the minimum threshold is what was just described by the imam in order for you to be obliged to pay it. He says, if a fraction of a sa'a, right? So the sa'a is the measurement used to give your zakat al-fitr. And that is 4 double-handed scoops, 4 of these. That makes up 1 sa'a. He says, if a fraction of that is what is their excess, it must be paid. So if you're taking into account all that you have, and you find that the excess amount that you have is equivalent to half a sa'a, meaning 2 double-handed scoops, you don't meet the full zakat al-fitr amount, but you get half of it, you have to pay what it is that you have. So if you find, look, all I have is, that's how little I have, is just enough to give half a sa'a, I still have to give it even though it's not the complete measurement that's required for zakat al-fitr. It says its obligation is not foregone due to a liability, because it is not a monetary obligation. Meaning if you owe somebody money, you're in debt. A debt can remove the obligation of zakat, zakat al-mal. When you calculate your zakat al-mal, you have to take into consideration your liabilities, the debts that you have. And if you have a large debt which detracts your nisab to being in the hole or below the nisab or negative, then you don't have to pay zakat. But when it comes to zakat al-fitr, we don't consider the liabilities, these debts, etc. Unless it is demanded. Meaning if the person that you owe is asking for it right now, he wants it right now, to to be paid back, then at that point the debt takes precedence as it is more important. Yarhamkumullah. He says it must be distributed for one's self and on behalf of everyone who is Muslim under one's financial care, such as a wife, a relative, the wife's servant, if their care is required, the wife of one's servant, and a relative who requires care based on the general statement of the Prophet ﷺ, give the fitr for those in your care. Right, so these are those you're obliged to pay the Zakat al-Fitr for. So the man of the house is essentially in charge of paying Zakat al-Fitr for everyone under his financial care, beginning with his wife, etc., etc., including the fitr of those taken care of voluntarily during the entire month of Ramadan. So if you voluntarily decide to take care of people in Ramadan as part of your ibadat, your acts of worship and righteousness, you're going to sponsor people. If you sponsor them for the entire month, not part of the month, part of the month would exclude you from this ruling. But if you sponsored them for the entire month, then you're responsible for paying their Zakat al-Fitr. He says, if there is not enough Zakat al-Fitr available for everyone whose financial care is required, meaning all of these people you're taking care of, if you look to see what you have of Zakat al-Fitr and it's not going to cover everybody, you should begin with yourself. Spending on oneself is given precedence, as is the fitr. Meaning you have to provide for yourself before you can provide for others. It's kind of like, in the plane when they tell you the oxygen mask, if it drops down, you put it on yourself first before you would apply to even your children. You have to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of others. And this is also the same when it comes to Zakat al-Fitr. After that, the wife comes next. Your wife, her financial care is absolutely required. If you have a bond servant who must be maintained, even in times of financial difficulty, if you cannot maintain, and this is one of the things about indentured servants or bond servants in Islam, is that if you are unable to financially support them, you cannot take care of them, then you have to release them. In theory, of course. After that is his mother, because she is given precedence in regards to kind treatment. And this was the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when someone asked, who deserves my kind treatment? The Prophet ﷺ responded, your mother, your mother, your mother, and then your father, which is the next person, the father, due to this very hadith. After that is the child, due to the general requirement of financial support, and then those closest related in inheritance, as they are more deserving. And if there are two or more, when it comes to inheritance, that are equal, they have the same footing in inheritance with regards to a single sa'a available, right? Maybe there's two or there's three people that are equal in their level of inheritance, but you only have one sa'a, you can't pay for all three, then in that case you'll draw lots. They'll basically draw straws, and whoever wins, you'll pay for their Zakat al-Fitr. It says one sa'a is to be paid by the owners based on the percentage of ownership for a bond servant. Again, this is talking about in the event that a bond servant is owned by more than one person, then that group of owners would have to pay on behalf of their bond servant based on the percentage of each person's ownership. It is recommended to give it on behalf of a fetus, right? So an unborn child. It's recommended to pay Zakat al-Fitr, as this was done by Uthman, though it is not an obligation, just like it is not an obligation to calculate the fetus of cattle in the Zakat of livestock, or the fetus of your animals when calculating Zakat of livestock. And paying Zakat al-Fitr is not obligatory on behalf of a recalcitrant wife, even if she is pregnant. Recalcitrant wife is talking about nashes. Imam al-Buhuti rahimahullah defines this, nashes, as the wife who disobeys her husband regarding that which is required of her. And this, by and large, means she denies her husband intimacy, or is disobedient in other obligations, like letting people into the home that he prohibited, or going out to places he's not happy with without his permission, etc. So in the event that, she's disobedient in this regard, the husband is not obliged to pay for her Zakat al-Fitr, even if she's pregnant, because he is not required to spend on her in general in such a condition, as she has become like any other woman to him. They say she's like ajnabiyya at this point. If she's denying him the marital bed, denying him his other fundamental rights as a husband, she's become like any other ajnabiyya, non-married woman out there. Distributing one's fitrah, which is required to be paid by another. So distributing one's fitrah here, which is required to be paid by another, the fitrah of like the wife or the insolvent relative, their fitrah is required to be paid by their husband or their family member that is solvent. If they decide to distribute it on their own, it will suffice them. It's fine, as they are originally addressed to pay it themselves. They're the ones that are required by the Islamic law to pay it themselves, but because they're married or they have a family member that's solvent while they're unable to pay it, then that particular person is simply shouldering that responsibility. And so if they decide to do it on their own accord, then it will suffice, meaning it will count for them. He says it will also suffice, this is Imam Ibn Qaid here, he says it will suffice if someone pays another's fitrah voluntarily, so long as their permission was granted. And if not, then it won't. So basically, if I'm not responsible for paying your Zakat al-Fitr, but I voluntarily decide to do it, I say, you know what, I'm going to pay his Zakat al-Fitr this year just out of the kindness of my heart to help him out, or to show a gesture of kindness or brotherly love. I have to have your permission in order to do that. If I don't have your permission, then I can pay it, but it won't count for you. Unlike, a person that you're required to do it for. If they decide to pay on their own accord, it doesn't require your permission. They can do it on their own. Zakat al-Fitr becomes obligatory at sunset on the night of the Eid al-Fitr. And this is the first time concluding the last of Ramadan, or concluding the fast of Ramadan entirely is intended. This is when we're going to end Ramadan totally, and that happens at sunset. Whoever accepts Islam after sunset, possesses a bondservant after sunset, gets married after sunset, and consummates their marriage after sunset, or has a child after sunset, is not required to pay their fitrah due to the lack of what would obligate it. If any of the above mentioned were present before sunset, they are due to the presence of what obligates it. So basically, if you accept Islam before sunset of Eid, you didn't even fast, but moments, you have to pay Zakat al-Fitr. Or if you got married before Ramadan ended, by moments you got married, right? Or the day before, the night before, it's because you would consummate your marriage. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do that in the daytime. Even if you did, it would be haram, but you would still be obliged to pay Zakat al-Fitr, etc. He says, hastening to distribute Zakat al-Fitr is permissible before Eid by 2 days. So we understand paying Zakat al-Fitr is an obligation at Maghrib, the night of Eid. But it's permissible to prepay by 2 days, based on the hadith narrated in Sahih Bukhari, on the authority of Ibn Umar, who said the Messenger of Allah obligated Sadaqat al-Fitr of Ramadan and said at the end, they used to give it before the Fitr by a day or two. And it's preferable to distribute it on Eid before going out to the prayer, based on the previously mentioned hadith narrated by Ibn Umar, the hadith that we opened up with. He said they used to give it before they went for prayer. Ibn Umar, it is disliked to distribute it for the remainder of the day. Meaning if you miss the distribution window of time between, Salat al-Fajr, for example, in the day, and then going out to pray, Salat al-Eid, if you missed that window, it's disliked It's makruh to distribute it throughout the rest of the day after the prayer, sinful to delay after it, meaning after the day of Eid, because it is in direct opposition to the Prophet's command to enrich them on this day. Right? So it's a sin to give your zakat after the day of Eid totally, like you blew it, you blew the time. But it has to be made up because it is still a liability. So even though you missed the window to pay it, that which is either permissible, that which is an obligation, that which is preferred, that which is makruh, then you moved on to the state of being haram, like you've gone to the next day, it still has to be done. It's not like, oh, I missed it so I don't have to pay it. No, it has to be paid regardless. So next is, what do you give? And this is always a question every year. What is it that I give for my Zakat al-Fitr? It says the obligation for everyone is to distribute 1 sa'a, which is the equivalent of 4 muds. We just talked about the measurement of that. Either wheat or barley, including their meal and flour, that's when it's all ground up, dates, raisins, or dried yogurt, which is made from buttermilk. The dry yogurt's made from buttermilk, based on the saying of Sa'id al-Khudri. It's reported by both Imam al-Bukhari and Muslim. He said, we used to distribute our Zakat al-Fitr while the Prophet ﷺ was with us in the amount of 1 sa' of food, barley, dates, raisins, or dried yogurt. And the best are dates, followed by raisins, wheat, whatever's considered more beneficial, like from storable foods, barley, its meal, its flour, and lastly dried yogurt. In the event that you're trying to figure out what to give, those are the best things to give in that particular order. It says if those 5 types, those 5 is wheat, barley, dates, raisins, dried yogurt, are unavailable, any storable grain like corn, rice, lentils, dried figs, or dates will suffice, but not bread, because it's not considered weighable or storable. So other food types that are not storable foods, you can't give that as Zakat al-Fitr. You can't go give cheeseburgers. You can't give mashed potato. You can't give cooked food. You can't give things that will go off. Because the idea is that receiving Zakat al-Fitr, it could potentially last for some time. It also has to be measurable, weighable. So you can give the sa', the amount. You can't give something faulty, like something eaten by worms or soaked with water, or something stale or mixed with a large amount of what is considered insufficient as zakat, or its value, which is given as zakat. Meaning you can't calculate the monetary amount. You say, look, a sa' of rice is like $10. I'm going to give $10. That's not a thing, according to the madhab. That does not even suffice. It will not count, because the Zakat al-Fitr is foodstuffs. It's not money. It's not Zakat al-Mal. You're not giving money here. He says it is permissible for a group to give their zakat to an individual from the recipients of zakat, meaning we all can get together and we all have our zakat that we want to give. We can give it to one person, all of us. 10 of us can give all of our zakat to one person, and vice versa. Meaning we can give our zakat to multiple people. So I have zakat, me, my wife, my kids, whoever I'm taking care of, I can go and give that to multiple people. I can break it up over a group of 10 people or 12 people. He says it is best that the receiver get no less than a mud of wheat or 1/2 of a sa' of another food type. So if I'm going to break up my Zakat al-Fitr over numerous people, you don't want to give them such a small amount of it. You want to give them an amount which is sufficient for an expiation. 1 mud of wheat, which is 1 double-handed scoop of wheat, or 1/2 a sa', 2 of these of other food types. That way they get something substantial enough for a meal or 2.